Hello folks, happy Juneteenth. I think we'll start off this video with a little bit of timely comedy from a comedian by the name of Godfrey. Godfrey, if you've never seen him, similar to Jay Farrow, does some great impressions, does a good Jason Statham, does Trump, does Obama, does similar to Jay, he does a good Denzel and everything. But this little particular maybe 2.5 minutes or so, I'm going to let Godfrey go ahead and start us off here because he's commenting on a very true situation, and we'll explain it after I let Godfrey go ahead and take it away.
Isn't bluffing, is he? Jesus Christ. There were two guys on a horse trying to capture me. It was weird. Don't let that white guilt fuck up that joke. Just fucking laugh through it. It's a slavery joke. Fucking go through it. He's rolling back a lot of shit. A lot. And all my Latin friends. Oh, you're such fools. There's a fantastic video of Cubans celebrating Donald Trump. Oh, yeah. Have you seen it? They have the MAGA hats, and they're playing the conga just like fucking. Donald Trump, it's mi favorito. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, it's mi favorito. Donald Trump, huepa, hey! Donald Trump es mi favorito. Mi favorito presidente número uno. Huepa, tan, 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 tan. I'm telling you, it's fantastic. And I love salsa. And they're jamming. Everyone's like, MAGA, MAGA, namba, namba, MAGA, MAGA. MAGA almost sounds Spanish. MAGA, MAGA. Couple days ago, they're like, what's wrong with that? Leave me alone. I can't believe this shit. But I love you, Donald Trump. He's like, buenos dias. Muy malo. A cucaracha. I'm so sorry. Muy malo. Adios, amigos. Buenos tardes. Goodbye. Anything with an O is Spanish. We're taking it away. Potato, tomato, I don't give a shit. It's all Spanish. How can you do this to us, Donald Trump? We have a party. Please. I laughed for 20 minutes. That's what you get.
So, clearly, we are making light of a very serious situation here. But what Godfrey was talking about is the lady who wrote that song that you see here. That lady, her husband was taken away from her and deported. And she is the one who is doing this Cubans for Trump, Latinos for Trump song and everything. And now she is... This occurred in Miami. And there is newscast video of her losing her mind. We are talking like Mexican soap opera on 20. On the dial of 1 to 10, she's at 20, 22, easy. And she's losing her mind because her husband was deported because they thought they would be immune to this kind of stuff. Leading up to the 2024 election, everybody said what was going to happen. And it's happening. And now everybody's going, the leopards are eating my faces? I thought I threw the T-bone steak in the other cage. Why am I getting eaten too? I thought you were going to eat the people in the other cage. Because I thought they were going to be the criminals. They were going to be the drug dealers. They were going to be the illegals. And this has gotten to be insane, and there's case after case after case after case after multitudes of cases where people thought they would be immune. Something would happen adjacent to them, but not on them directly, and now they're finding out. It's FAFO season, and all of this is because he cannot out deport in a legal and efficient and proper manner. He cannot out deport administrations that happened before him. He hasn't been able to hit Biden's averages, and you may sit there and say, well, political napalm, doesn't that actually mean that deportations are good? Deportations are good when they are effective and they are aimed properly. If I'm aiming at a military base and take out a hospital that is 2, maybe 1.5 clicks to the left of it, that's not good. You can't sit there and say, well, we hit a building. Yay, us. Go us. No. You missed your target and you hit the wrong building. And that is what is happening with, ICE has become jackbooted Gestapo people. They're wearing these masks. They're not identifying themselves. They're not wearing any identifying paraphernalia. They're not producing warrants. They're not producing badges because they're pardoned J6ers for the most part. And what Godfrey is talking about here is really, really serious. All of these people who put so much into Trump don't understand that he's the great betrayer. He uses people and spits them out and never has any other thought because there's zero empathy, zero compassion, and to be honest, there's no thought, period, at all. There is no thought that goes on in his head, let alone dance with who brought you, give some credit to the people who got you where you are. It doesn't matter to him because everything is moment to moment, second to second, and he just is brain-addled. He doesn't think properly, so he's never going to be like, oh, well, those were the people who wrote the Latinos for Trump song. Maybe I should cut them a break, because he doesn't think that way. But if you line his pockets and you fleece him, he'll think about you, and you will have bought a pardon, like Judge Janine Pirro Box of Wine's husband. Judge Janine paid off Trump, and it's like, okay, well, the husband gets a pardon. This administration is insane. So thank you, Godfrey, for starting off this particular video today. It is not done to make light or take in jest the very serious situation that is going on in the United States right now, where people are being hauled off, sometimes not to be heard from for days, with families panicking, children being separated from their parents on the street, people being lured into immigration courts for their visits and getting popped, or going into court and the judge says case dismissed, and ICE is literally salivating like lions who haven't eaten in 2 months, seeing that T-bone steak again just hanging from a string above their cage. They just can't wait to get at it. It is insane what is happening in the States right now, and the soul of our nation has just been utterly destroyed and wrecked. Now let's get on to one of our first topics, and that is the right-wing disinformation machine is out in force again. They cannot help themselves. We cover it so much on this channel. We break apart, and admittedly, it's not always just the right who does this, but it is predominantly the right, and especially on social media. It is a good thing that when you respond to a post on Twitter that gets community noted, you get a notification of the community note. Otherwise, MAGA would have a field day because they could spread the disinformation, and by the time the correction hits, they know it's already been a nugget implanted in their idiotic fan base, and it just further enrages and engages them and keeps them in their little bubble, and they never wind up finding out the truth. We saw that with the the boxer in the Olympics that everybody is claiming is trans or has male chromosomes and all that. Iman Khalif. We have that situation where they're able to just elevate that Russian propaganda from the disgraced boxing federation that that person's testosterone is too high and is male, has male chromosomes. They could just keep saying that because there's no pushback to it. There's no proper repercussions. We have two accounts, or two, not accounts as in Twitter accounts, but two situations in which MAGA is off at the races about Vance, the guy who shot two Minnesota lawmakers. So the first thing that was going around for the first day was that he was appointed by Tim Walz. No, Tim Walz continued an appointment for the person on a bipartisan commission that was supposed to be made up of Democrats and Republicans. He was not a Tim Walz appointee. He was not a Democrat. He was not a BLM, Antifa, or anything like that. There's videos of him giving sermons in other countries, and it is not that only the right or only conservatives are religious people, but there is a certain style in which they are religious and present as religious and everything, and that's exactly what Vance was doing. His hit list was all Democratic lawmakers, and it seemed that he was going for pro-choice people. So, of course, Patriot Oasis claims that Tim Walz has deleted every post he ever made praising the Minnesota assassin Vance Bolter. Tim Walz never had any tweets praising Vance Bolter. He literally never talked about him. And simple technology, the Wayback Machine, would reveal that. But MAGA just assumes they're speaking to people in their base. The base will never question it. They'll just take their little chickadee bird mouths in the nest, know that their parents are flying in, and just take their face and mouth and aim it vertically up to the sky and know that mom and dad are going to puke up some partially digested worm right into their gullet, and they don't have to do anything. They don't have to ask mom or dad where the worm came from. They don't have to ask if it's a high-grade worm or not. They don't have to ask if the birds beat up other birds for the worm. They're just like, yay, worm. This is what I know. This is my life. Puke that right into my face hole. I'm good. That's MAGA. And I want to give you an example of how to do it properly on the other side. There is that long-standing rumor, that meme. Trump said, if I ever ran for president, I would run as a Republican because they're so stupid. All they do is just watch Fox all day. And that's how you'd reach it. It's something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. The left will routinely call out that meme or that graphic when it is posted because it is not true. It never happened. There's another one of Trump and Epstein on the couch, and there's girls sitting around them, and the girls' legs are impossibly thin and long, and they seem way longer than humans should be. It's kind of like alien legs. And like Epstein's body is disappearing into the couch behind these girls. It's like, where is he from the waist down? That is often called out as being a Photoshop. The left to the left generally polices its own, and the left to the right, again, doesn't seem to fall into those traps. The right will gaslight you and try to claim that certain things the left does fall for and repeat, like the Russia hoax, where people are literally in jail for trying to interfere with that election. There are Russians in jail for it. It was not a hoax. The collusion part was generally proven not to be true. He did not seek to benefit from that on purpose and set that up. He did benefit from it, but it was believed that there were no ties and he was actively saying, hey, help me. the very fine people hoax, which is not a hoax. He absolutely said it. There was further context around it, in front of it and after it, but there's very fine people on both sides were words that he uttered. So the right, when they're caught and put up against the wall and cornered, will try to gaslight you out of it and mention those things, but they still exist, and they still very much are the situation that the left describes it as. So we have this piece of disinformation. It really reminds me of back when Daniel Perry, the guy who subdued the guy acting kind of violent in New York on the subway and then wound up killing him, and he went on trial and he was found guilty and then he got pardoned. But for a little while right after that, there were videos of somebody being violent on the New York subway. That was another black male, but it wasn't the guy that Perry wound up killing. It was a different guy. But they tried to use it to make their case, like, oh, Perry was vindicated in what he did because look at what this guy did. He was crazy. Here's another example of it. But that wasn't even him. And, of course, we know all the J6 rumors of, like, this guy's a Fed, he flashed the badge. No, it was a vape. This guy's talking to his girlfriend about being a Fed. Nope, it was a boyfriend-girlfriend talking about getting into the Capitol. This guy's a communist because he has a hammer and sickle tattoo. Nope, it's the logo from the game Dishonored by Arcane Studios. I don't know why they think they can continue to try it, because they get busted every time. And you're the same choice you had to make with Jovan Hunt and Pulitzer, Jeff Fillion on this channel. You have to make that conscious decision to think, is the right stupid when they do this? And they actually believe these things? Or do they know they're spreading false information, don't care, and think they could get that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, one day of your brain to follow with them and hope you never find out? But with as many times as we do find out and the truth is revealed, why do they keep doing it? If they're stupid, why aren't they learning? Unless they're so stupid they cannot learn the lesson. Or if they're grifters and social media enragement farmers, they're just going to keep doing it because it's their job. Dom Luker on Twitter, in an interview, stated like that was his job. His job was to make crazy tweets because he knows it would get engagement, and it doesn't amount to much for him. He works like 12 hours a day and essentially gets like a minimum wage thing off of Twitter's revenue by spreading misinformation that he knows is misinformation, but he knows it's enragement engagement, and that's his lot in life. That's the niche he's fulfilling, and that's what other MAGA accounts do. Prime example, MAGA Michelle is a fairly well-known account on Twitter, showing up all over the place with this kind of crap. Yeah, libs, he's one of you. Keep saying he's not. Nobody believes you. Democrats are saying that Vance Bolter is a Republican. Let's put that to rest now. This guy is not this guy. They don't even look the same. When you look at the darker colored hair on the goatee, it almost looks like it's coming down as a walrus chop, sort of like Hulk Hogan, especially during his Hollywood Hogan run. The man on the right is not Vance Bolter. He's the husband of Lily Schechter, the former chair of the Harris County Democrat. Busted. I mean, I have gone toe to toe with this woman, and it was like, oh, you're just a mad, angry lib, blah blah blah. And when this happened, I went and posted back to her. I was like, this you? There's no shame. They don't delete their stuff. Mike Lee hasn't deleted his tweets about this, and they will never retract, and they will never apologize, and they keep doing it no matter how many times they get busted for it, and it blows my mind. So that's enough of the disinformation that's been going on about Vance. All accounts seem to point to the fact that he has Republican leaning. He's a registered Republican. He's voted for Trump. these democratic connections don't seem to exist whatsoever. Of course, the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination is murky. The guy in the bushes down in Florida, those two are still murky. We still don't know anything really about the Butler one. And, well, I'm not going to comment on that because I can tell you what I think of that. And suffice to say, I know why we don't have any further information on that. Now, cross-eyed crazy dude, FBI Director Kash Patel, has been peddling this around Twitter and everything, that the FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 election, including allegations of interference by the Chinese Communist Party. I've immediately declassified the material and turned the documents over to Chairman Grassley. One, as noted here, the DOJ does not turn over evidence until the investigation is concluded. You don't share the plan while it's happening. And if you look around properly on Twitter, you will find threads like this one over here, which I gotta move here. Brief thread on why the latest conspiracy theory about China sending driver's licenses to Wisconsin for fake absentee votes is a whole lot of nonsense. It boils down to the fact that it's not that you always had to show an ID when you voted, but you had to show an ID when you registered to vote. And if you registered to vote with a fake ID, your voter registration would get kicked out. If you were not using a unique identifier, it would get kicked out. It is cross-referenced with the Department of Transportation. In other words, there has to be an existing record of a driver's license or ID on file for the registration to go through. A fake plastic ID from China doesn't create a driver's license record. So none of this is logically true. Just the way that it was not logically true with all the conspiracy theories in 2020 about stolen elections. And this truck driver is saying, I don't know where my trailer full of ballots went. And Melissa Caron and her after Davids, as she said it, in her drunken stupors in court. And they pulled boxes out from under the table. Yeah, boxes that contained ballots. And there was a water leak. There was a water leak at 7 in the morning, not at night. It didn't stop the counting. It was resolved with a slight delay before the counting started. While everybody was sent home, no, the guy running the floor said, you're not going home. Everybody go back to work, which is why people went back to the tables and pulled out things from under the table. Oh, a van showed up and dumped ballots at this precinct. It was the food truck. I mean, it's the reason why I think we are seeing this kind of crap from Kash, and why all these right-wing accounts, including notables like Sidney Powell and General Flynn and Mike Lindell, who we're going to get into the week he had, I think the reason why they're elevating all this is because they know that in New York, they revealed that a court said you can proceed with this investigation into why there are these anomalies of 9 people saying they voted for a Democrat candidate and only 4 of them are saying that their vote counted. And, 10 people that voted for this Democrat position and none of them voted for Kamala. There was no vote for the president. I mean, there's a lot of statistical anomalies that are now beginning to get looked at. The left is unfortunately in a very dicey situation when it comes to that, because there was so much chaos and so much craziness in 2020 with what the right was doing and what Rudy was doing and got smacked down for, what Mike Lindell was doing and got smacked down for, what Tina Peters did and got smacked down for, what Jeff Filliot tried to do and was humiliated, and even his own people wanted to throw him off the Arizona fraud it. And cyber ninjas couldn't back up their work and were fined money daily for not showing their work on the chalkboard after they presented their findings to the Arizona board. Everything, and 60 plus losses for Trump and only 1 win. And all these people who want to gaslight and complain, oh, well, standing, blah, blah, blah. Well, then don't make frivolous lawsuits. if there was not a standing for a person in Florida to sue Texas for how they handle the elections, then you get somebody in Texas to do it. You get somebody in the state who's affected and claims that they were affected. Get them to file the suit. You can't do that because you know it's all bullshit. And then you had that Beatles case where Beatles was suing Kamala and Biden and Obama. Like, he just he threw a darts on a board at a bunch of Democrats and said, I'm going to sue you for taking away my liberties to have Trump win in 2020. That case is hysterical. They're all losers. They're all losses. And they were so fantastical and so crazy and so 80s alien probed my butthole and stole my cow from the field nuts, National Enquirer nuts, that when there is some legitimate concerns on the Democrat side, you're almost afraid to talk about them or root for them because it's like, well, you said our stuff was crazy and elections were secure, and now you think Kamala supposedly won and Trump lost. You guys are hypocrites and you guys are the whack jobs. We're not the whack jobs. So it is a very, very dangerous path the left has to go down on this one. But there is some investigations turning up results. And I mean legitimate things, not things that Rudy pulls out of his ass and says, we have theories in search of facts. Let's get on to the people doing that one real quick. So here's Mike Lindell, who just lost in court this week about his defamation of the voting company. He lost that defamation suit. It was proved that he did defame and all the stuff that he was doing. And here he is back saying, oh, yep, 2020 election stolen because of the China rigged elections and U.S. Congress flies to China after rigging the... I mean, this is all just complete and utter insanity and bullshit. And it's Wall Street Apes, it's Mike Lindell, it's John Rich, it's all the typical right-wing Twitter accounts elevating this because they know there's starting to be some erosion of the foundation of 2024, that people are legitimately looking into the anomalies, like losing all the swing states, heavily Democrat local but not Democrat at the president level. And now I get it, as was properly pointed out, a little after the election and the dust started to settle, people were saying these aren't anomalies. It seems like across the globe, the existing structure was upended. If Republicans were in power in a place, Democrats would win. If Democrats were in power for a place, Republicans would win. They're scared of the economy. They're scared of the post-COVID world. They want to churn and chop and blend and scattered, smothered, and chunked all the hash browns of the establishment. No matter what it was voted out. So if a state had a lot of, Republican positions, Democrats got voted in, but then because it was a Democrat president, a Republican got voted in. Clearly the landslide, the mandate, none of that was actually true. More people voted not for Trump than voted for him. But there's beginning to get some picks at what is going on. And upstate New York, I think it's a town called Rockwell. It's serious now, and it's being looked into. It won't change what happened. The election has been certified. However, it would be interesting to see if any tampering was done. And like I've always said on this channel, tampering with the transmission of electronic data of the ballots and the results could happen. However, it is the vote tallies, the actual what is the booth reporting, what is the paper behind it. That is where reality is. And if slightly ahead of schedule, a precinct sent their data in electronically and said, okay, we were 70-30 Trump because the machines there were hacked or something, the ballots, when they are submitted, that is what counts. The electronic data is submitted early. It's used for projections, but the final counts after things are done and audited and looked at, it comes from the ballots, not the transmission of the data. So even if the data was intercepted and manipulated, it then should show a discrepancy when the actual ballots are finally tallied. So this Musk and Starling thing, I'm going to say, is 98% a nothing burger, because there's a check and balance in the system that should stop hacked electronic data from ever, essentially being considered final. General Mike Flynn, I plead the fifth. This fucking quiddiot loser, the guy who is believed to actually be Q, he's elevating the CCP stuff. Mike Lee, well, we'll get to Mike Lee, but Mike Lee, who was spreading the Democrat terrorist thing about the assassin, he's saying, he's posting this picture, which has been debunked years ago. The backdrop was red, white, and blue. The area behind Biden was red, but this was not a Sith Lord. This was not Nazi Germany Gestapo stuff. The colors were red, white, and blue. It so happened that red was the backdrop behind him. Does it look a little eerie, even in this super tight cropped shot? Yes, when you see it on a wider shot, you see more colors. I mean, here you can see more of the red, but here is the context of what he was saying at the time. Democracy only works if you respect the rule of law and institutions. This is not Nazi-ish. You needed to see the uncropped photos for it, which is what the right does. They crop out what they don't want, and you are left with this, and then they peddle it. There are people on this platform this week that still were trying to say Biden had a video in 2020 where he was talking about building a voter fraud organization, and there's people who still believe that's what he was saying, instead of the larger context of when he was saying doing a voter fraud investigation organization. Now for the final topic of the day. Hegseth had a really, really bad week. Let's listen in.
It's all meant
Excuse me. If ordered by the president, I'm going to ask you once again, to shoot peaceful protesters in the legs, would you carry out such an order from the president?
Senator, as I've said before, of course, I reject the premise of your question and the characterization that I would be given or are given unlawful orders. It's all meant to attempt to smear the commander-in-chief, and I won't fall for it.
Considering that the president in his first term actually ordered such a thing, it is not a premise that you can reject. He can order it, do the same thing. So you're, again, I think you would just follow what the president wants you to do.
Hegseth is being asked here about this claim that Mark Esper had made in his book and in media tours back in 2022, that during the Floyd riots, Trump was like, can't you just shoot them in the legs? The right will attempt to say, well, there was never any corroboration about it. But when you look at the violent rhetoric that Trump has said in the past, how he had violent rhetoric on display at J6, whether it came from him or from the people surrounding him, like trial by fire, you got to fight like hell or there won't be a country anymore, all that stuff. And then here you see an account 13 hours from now, 13 hours from the time of this video, after we already know how much of a Republican this guy is. You have this account still claiming Generation X, which is unfortunately the bad generation in this last voting cycle. The boomers went less Trump than Gen X does. It's very disappointing. Generation X vet, and claiming it's a Democrat. Is it possible for you to comment? It's typical. Another clip of Hegseth this week
about the decision-making process, its potential consequences. Public reports indicate that the removal of General Hawk, who has served his country proudly, has been influenced by social media influencer personality on social media, Laura Loomer, spreads conspiracy theories. She's been denounced even by Republicans. And the idea is that any leaders within our agencies responsible for our nation's security, somebody would be dismissed, based on the advice of a social media influencer, is alarming to say the least. It's surely not how we should be running our military. So were you consulted regarding General Hawk's dismissal, yes or no?
Well, Senator, I would not advise believing everything you read in the media.
Were you
And I'm consulted on every single decision.
Okay,
I'm
so
the
that's
decision maker
alarming.
for the
It's your
department, and we all
department,
serve
Mr.
at the pleasure of the president,
Okay.
and
So
we have
what
the
was your-
prerogative to
what
make
was
those
your
decisions
what
for the
was your
best for the
recommendation?
country,
Did you
and we did
personally
that.
approve Mr. Hawk's dismissal, yes or no?
Anyone coming or going
Personally
at the
approve
Defense
it.
Department, especially at that level, would ultimately be a decision
So
made by
that's a
me,
yes.
and I
Did you
stand
personally
behind that.
relieve him?
Excuse
Did
me?
you personally relieve him? Yes or no?
Anyone at that level
You did,
who is
so that's a
relieved
yes.
would be relieved by the Secretary of Defense.
Was there a specific justification for General Hawk's dismissal? Was there a specific justification for General Hawk's dismissal?
Ma'am, we all serve at the pleasure of the president, and the president deserves the type
it
of
true?
commanders and advisors that he thinks will best
Did you
equip him
discuss General
to
Hawk's
accomplish the
dismissal with
mission.
Laura Loomer prior to his removal?
I don't discuss who I talk about anything with, but ultimately this is my decision, and he serves at the pleasure of the president, and that's why he's no longer there.
So do you believe it's appropriate for any social media personality to influence personnel decisions in your department, yes or no?
I believe your time is up, Senator.
Oh, it is not up to you to tell me when my time is up.
Well, the time
And I
of
am
the
going to
senator.
say, Mr. Secretary, you're either feckless or complicit. You're not in control of your department. This is unserious. It is shocking. You're not combating anti-Semitism within your ranks. It's a dangerous and pivotal time in our nation's history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. And I don't appreciate the smirk, sir. You are the Secretary of Defense.
The time.
So she admittedly was extremely combative and did a lot of interrupting in the beginning because at this point they had all seen what Hegseth was answering like. The appropriate answer was, did Laura Loomer help convince you to fire this guy? Because she claimed on social media that she had a hand in it. It would be, ma'am, this is a ridiculous line of questioning that somebody on social media who is not a political appointee and not part of the president's cabinet can influence decisions at this level. So my answer would be no. Anything she said out on social media, anything she claims is a lie. She had nothing to do with it. That's all that he had to say. If you wanted to add the flair before the no or after the no, fine. But get to the no. Answer the question, yes or no. That's not what Hegseth did. He wanted to do a dance, and he was getting called out on it the whole time because the man is a DUI hire. He keg breath. I mean, it's pathetic. Another example of Hegseth getting nailed to the wall this week. Kane, when you called the Gregg family to tell them that their dad's name was no longer going to be on the base, what was their reaction? Hegseth, the Army notified them. Kane, you didn't call any of the families. I've spoken with them. They were called by the press. That's how they learned about it. So, I mean, he's getting roasted all over the place for this. And he's barely answering these questions where it's like, yes or no. Would you take an order from the president to have protesters shot in the legs? And you can sit there and say that is a preposterous thing. The president would never order anything like that, but there is, of course, proof that he has that attitude and would do things like that. I mean, he sat at his own rallies. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. If you rough him up a little bit, oh, well, don't worry about it, cops. I'll take care of it. The man has had violence-inducing rhetoric in the past. And to think that he wouldn't have discussed that thing with Esper, that it was claimed that he did, is you're not being fair to the situation. It is a high possibility Trump did have that discussion with Esper back in the time. And there's certainly plenty of proof that it's within his realms of possibility. But if Hegseth wants to say that is crazy, a president would never order that. When pressed, well, okay, yes or no. If a president did give you that order, what would you do? Would you take the order? Yes. Or would you push back on it? No. And he dodged it, because if he says yes, then he could eventually be proven to be a liar. If he says, if he says yes, well, then it's just terrible that a president would say that and that he would not push back on it. It would just be a sycophantic yes man, an enabler. And if he says no and Trump hears it, then Trump's going to get mad and be like, dude, what are you doing? You wouldn't carry out my orders. You're disloyal. You're fired. And Trump would absolutely do that too. That's how he remained relevant, was having a show in which he said, you're fired to people. And that is what brought him back from the brink of disaster. If that show never got on the air, we would not be hearing Trump's name like this, the way we are now. He wouldn't have been president 2 times. He wouldn't have had the power to run. If he did run, he would have been put in the joke bin that we all put him in and the start, and are surprised that somehow he managed to do this twice. That's the problem with the people in the United States, though, but, So, thank you for following me in the journey of this video here of this week, between the disinformation and everything that is happening poorly to Hegseth this week and being called out. And again, not to make light or jest of people who are being deported and families who are being broken up, but to all the people who thought that the leopards would not eat your face and that you could stick your face through the bars of the cage of the hungry leopards at the zoo who are being mistreated, don't know what to tell you, man. Don't know what to tell you as to why you thought you would be protected, but welcome to these great states of America, folks, and enjoy the ride, because we still have too many years of it left, unfortunately. Thanks, everybody. I know I just said my goodbyes, but I forgot to link and talk about the proof of what was happening with the rewired elections and everything like that. So she won. They didn't just change the machines, they rewired the election. How Leonard Leo's 2021 sale of an electronics firm enabled tech giants to subvert the 2024 election. The bigger thread on it is Rockland, New York. MSN has picked it up over here. Essentially what was happening was that an accredited lab for certifying voting machines in key states like Pennsylvania, Florida, and New Jersey, in 24, the lab reportedly approved updates de minimis to ballot scanners, print and reconfigured firmware upgrades, and a new electionware reporting system. So a new version of the software, a new version of how the hardware thinks and acts, reconfiguring the printers, and making new ballot scanners. They were classified as de minimis updates, meaning they were so small and insignificant they were not going to pass the standard scrutiny and get the proper pre and post testing. How did it work beforehand? How did it work after? If you work in software, it is sometimes called an epic when this is done. It is there is a sum up that happens after the project is done, whether it's a failure or is successful. There's a term for it which I'm forgetting at the moment, but when you are done, not a moratorium, but it is something like that, and it is slipping my mind at the moment. Moratorium is like a break or a hold on thing. Postmortem. Thank you. I had to pick my brain a little bit there. These are the kinds of changes that when they're done, they would be tested and verified, and a postmortem would be done. But it wasn't, because they were filed as too small to be noticeable. One ant got in a house, was stepped on and killed. No big deal. But in reality, that ant was a scout, and the whole hive has now moved into the house, and now you have to call an exterminator. but you didn't notice because you thought the one ant was the outlier. In Rockland County, several voters testified under oath that their ballots didn't match the official results. Senate candidate Diane Sayre reportedly lost votes in precinct after precinct. One district, 9 voters claimed they voted for her, but only 5 were recorded. So I was a little off on what I said earlier. It was 4 were missing instead of 4 were counted. And another 5 voters swore they supported her, but only 3 votes appeared. So that is a really, really bad ratio on that one. It wasn't just third-party candidates who saw the results in multiple Democratic-leaning areas. Kamala Harris's name was reportedly missing from the top of the ballot entirely. They couldn't find her name to select. I know my good friends who live in Pennsylvania who said that when they were tracking their ballot after the election, they kept getting told that their ballots couldn't be found or wasn't submitted. Jack Cobb, the director of Pro V&V, he doesn't appear in the headlines. His lab certifies these machines. In one of these articles, maybe it was this one, the website is now gone. I will link this down in the description for you guys to read. Also, this Rebiz Journal one, who is just basically cautioning people about what all of this means. Like, one of the big things is, no, the 24 election cannot be reversed. However, this one presents in a less sensational way, a more middle-of-the-road way of what is being discovered about the vote tallies from the 24 election, how it plays into Democrats believing something fishy this way came back in November, and how things did not turn out the way they really supposed to have happened. And obviously energy behind a candidate doesn't necessarily transfer properly into voting on voting day. It's $2 billion spent, a person in a band or a full band throwing their weight behind a person doesn't elect an individual. But the anomalies in the data are certainly very, very odd. And of course, there was, what was called the bullet votes back in around election time, where there were just votes for presidents and nothing else. And how the majority of those bullet votes were coming in for Trump and not for Kamala. There is some crazy things. Temper your expectations. Look into these at your own risk and peril and decision. But I will link these 2 articles down below in the description for you to peruse on your own time and kind of make up your own opinions on these. This is not a topic I seek to persuade you on, because then I become no different than a Rudy or a Lindell or a Flynn or a Sidney Powell or a Lynn Wood or a Jeff Fillion and all those fucking scam artists and grifters that existed back in 2020 and we had to deal with for 4 years during Biden's presidency. So I'm not going to do that. I stand against that. But I'll link it below. Read it on your own time. Again, thanks for watching, everybody.